right, welcome back to the super-centex podcast with Chad Conine, DJ Ramirez. I'm Brice Cherry. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good. Like Brice, you and I were talking. DJ missed out on the baseball talk, so give her a little bit of a bone here. But I went to the Rangers Orioles game last night and saw them clinch the division series. So the fans were chanting, "We want Houston," which I know both of y'all will appreciate.
Be careful what you wish for. We'll see. I'm not counting any chickens yet either because I just know baseball. So
yeah, you got
October 10th and 11th.
Whoa, you guys got that fan side going.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's a fun time of year. It's October, and if it is, that means we've reached that point in the season where we've probably reached some high school football games of consequence. I think we've got several on the schedule this week that could be district championship games, even with a few weeks left to play in the season. So on top of that list, I mean, obviously, we've got to talk about China Spring and La Vega in the latest chapter in that long, storied history. We're obviously well acquainted with just how explosive China Spring can be. Alvarado's very acquainted with it after China Spring put up 50 in a quarter. We talked about that on this After Dark podcast, but I'm not sure we should sleep on a La Vega team that has won 4 in a row, won 56-20 last week against Waxahachie Life. What are the odds of a La Vega upset in this game? And would it even classify as an upset?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you mentioned 4 wins in a row for the Pirates over a couple of pretty good opponents, Lorena and Yoakum, for example, are really good teams. I mean, while we're on the subject, let me just say shout out to Josh Gregory, China Spring Athletic Director, texted me yesterday because I had mentioned he watched the late night podcast the other night and he was filling me in that they did not score a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown during that 50-point quarter. They did score a safety, so that's defensive points. But so I quizzed him a little bit. I said, okay, how many turnovers? I said, how do they get 7 possessions, right? Because 7 possessions is a half. I mean, it's probably a good half.
12-minute high school football quarter.
Yeah. And so it turns out Alvarado had 4 turnovers, right? So a little bit of a meltdown by Alvarado there. So
and I guess you do have to give China Spring credit. I'm sure some of those turnovers were forced, I mean.
Oh, for sure. And so I think what you're going to maybe have on Friday night, and I'll be covering that game, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Is I think you're going to have sort of a defensive smash mouth type of football game because I think China Spring's strength this season is its defense.
That's interesting to say with Cash McCollum, Kyle Barton, but you guys both have talked about that this year, their defense. DJ, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit interesting that their defense has stepped up so much because if y'all remember, they were the majority of their defense were like first-year starters. So it's really impressive for them to come so far. But I mean, they played a really tough non-district schedule. I mean, and their only 2 losses came to like really tough teams in Melissa and Parish Episcopal. And even though they kind of put Connolly away, we can't say Connolly isn't a good team. And obviously they started the season with Lorena and that was a pretty good win. So yeah, I think it'll be close, but I still think China Spring is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the safe pick. Here's what I'll say about La Vega. Good coaches over there that know what they're doing. They know how to game plan. They've been in big games before. And I do think that they're like trending in the right direction. That old coaching cliche of, we got to get better every week, blah, 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 blah. They're doing that. I mean, you can see they're, stair stepping, and making improvements. obviously Junior Thornton's a pretty nice addition to that team. Chad and I were at a high school football Hall of Fame board meeting, and Mike Cadell is one of the coaches that's on that board with us. And he was talking about, man, he's good. Junior's good, And I was like, yeah, he is. And interestingly, they've got him playing quarterback, just like Midway did toward the latter stages of, I say latter stages, before he got hurt. They had moved Junior to quarterback. I think his best position is receiver. I mean, that's what he's going to play in college. I could see him kind of as a slot guy at Texas State, but nevertheless, I mean, he's got, I think, like 700 passing yards, about 600 rushing yards. I mean, he's a playmaker and a nice complement to Bryson Rowland. So,
yeah, that was going to be my other comment on that game. Is I haven't got a chance to see the Junior Thornton, Bryson Rowland 1-2 punch yet this year, so I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I mean, it's a rivalry game; those are always fun. We've seen some epic, China Spring La Vega games over the years, and so I have high expectations for this one. And I think Chad's going to see a pretty good matchup.
And I am picking La Vega, which kind of goes against personal policy. When I'm going to cover a game, I usually roll with the home team just for the sake of not being annoyed by people, razzing me about who I picked. But I know the guys in the press box over there pretty well. I've known them for a long time, so I'm not too worried about that one.
They'll
probably have watched the podcast by then, and they'll hear your explanation. I mean, you did roll with Alvarado last week, so how'd that work out for you?
I had that one right for a quarter.
Yeah, and then the worm turned. So the other game to me that sets up as a probable district championship clash is Marlin taking on Riesel. So Marlin is 4-2. One of those losses being a forfeit loss. We remember in week 1. Riesel, meanwhile, 6-0, and to me, probably has an argument that it could be ranked in the top 10 in the state in 2A Division 1. This feels a little bit like a toss-up game, so I'm going to assign each of you a team. So, Chad, what is the path to victory for Riesel?
Grinding, just 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and like Saturday night, Saturday night I was like, oh my gosh, Texas Tech is Taj Brooks in a cloud of dust tonight, and you can win a football game like that, especially against teams that can score in a heartbeat. What you want to do is not let them have the ball very much. And the last time I saw Marlin, unfortunately, was against a team in Toller that did that to him. So having not seen Riesel play this year, and their stats aren't updated here that I'm looking at. Maybe they are in the Stats Plus, but
they're not.
I think they're probably a team that can grind and stay ahead of the chains and keep the ball in their own possession.
Yeah, and certainly we've shouted out their defense before on the pod. Obviously, it's been really, really good this year. I mean, I think they've leaned heavily on what you're talking about, the old Johnny Tusa kind of mindset of run the ball, play defense. I mean, that's that's fundamental football, and certainly Robert Little, I think, appreciates that kind of ball. So, that could be Riesel's path. DJ, you have seen Marlin play just last week, correct? Wasn't it last week? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do the Bulldogs have to do to win?
I really think it's a little bit of what Chad said, is they got to score quick and they got to, get open. which was Rosebud's strategy, but they couldn't get past Riesel's size. So I think that's another big thing is, you know, you got to get past those guys and because you're not going to be able to run the ball against them. They're big, you know, that up front, they're big.
Yeah, and that's a good point because that is something. Remember when we had our 828 podcast with all those coaches?
Yeah.
Those coaches talked about Riesel's size. You know, I think they've got some beef out there in Riesel. Maybe it's the power plant. I don't know. Radiation from the power plant.
Yeah, and I think defensively they do got to clean some stuff up, which is a lot of what Torres was talking about after post game last week. Was just, you know, he didn't think they played as well defensively as they should have. They had you know, penalties. It just shouldn't have been penalties, offside stuff. You know, I think there was one personal foul on special teams. I don't remember, but it was because it was late in the half. But yeah, I just think that if they can break away and get open and get, you know, Roderick shooters somebody to pass to and somebody that's gonna like make those receptions, they can win this. That's pretty much it, because like there's not much you can do when you've got basically a wall you've got to break through. Which is what
so
basically either, but everybody's telling me they're just impossible to like get through.
Wow. It sounds very much like Marlin's speed versus Riesel's size, and probably Marlin trying to score quick and Riesel trying to milk the clock. I mean, that's what it sounds like, a lot like.
I mean, you kind of it feels like typecasting of two towns in our area, right? But I mean, there's reason those things happen, right? You know,
and maybe Riesel can put up a speed trap. How about that? That's someone who's driven in Central Texas right there, throwing a joke.
Well, and also, I mean, you know, an award-winning columnist coming up with that on the spot, right?
John Werner will be at that game for us. Should be a fun one. I think he's just like Chad. I'm a little bit jealous of you guys covering these games because I think those are going to be good games. So
well, if you didn't cover Midway every week, maybe you'd see some of them.
Yeah, you know.
You're the one that sets the assignments, Brice.
That's true. I do. I have assigned myself one other game this year. That was Live Oak, which is a segue. How about that? And so Live Oak coach Brice Helton. Brices have to stick together, especially ones that know how to spell their name right. Brice with an I called me on Monday to let me know that the Falcons would be moving up from 6-man football to 11-man football. He had actually just told the team and the parents that day. So kind of a two-part question here. One related to Live Oak. How tough of a transition do you think that's going to be moving to really a different style of football? I mean, going from 6-man to 11-man. And then just more of a big picture question. Who else in Central Texas can you see, maybe not necessarily moving from 6-man to 11-man, but like moving up? Who's growing in their enrollment where you can see them growing in a classification or, you know, in the next realignment period, which comes up this next February, or, you know, maybe a realignment period down the road, like 2 years after that. So
yeah, I kind of like how Salina has gone from like 2A to 6A or something like that in the past decade or so.
Yeah.
Well, you know, to answer the question on Live Oak, it's, you know, it's a long established school now, and it's been sort of, I think, growing for a long time. So they're probably ready for this. Maybe going to 11-man makes them more attractive as a school. I don't, you know, as much as I've covered high school football over the years, I would say private school games represent less than 1% of the games that I've covered over that time. Maybe that's a little bit on the low side. Maybe it's more like 5%, but it's definitely not higher than 5%.
Right.
So I don't feel like I have a very good grasp of what makes a successful private school in Texas. And Waco, Waco has not sustained a lot of long running. Now, Riker is the exception, right? Because I mean, Mike Shields, the McGregor coach we talked about last week, went to Riker. Johnny Tusa went to Riker. So Riker has been there a long time. In the last 20 years, they've been a big time roller coaster school in terms of the sustainability of their football program.
Yeah. And we'll circle back to the other second part of the question. DJ, what would you say about, Live Oak's chances of, having a successful 11-man program?
Well, I think it's not even about the football, really, because I mean, fundamentally, it's going to be the same, right? Like, you're still going to teach kids how to tackle, how to run the ball, and all that stuff. But, where are you going to play?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These are issues. And so, I mean, I did obviously talk to Brice Helton, and he laughed when I asked, so is that field, like, can you tweak it, and he was like, your first question is the same question I got from all the parents, and no, they can't really tweak that field. There's not enough length there to obviously with a 6-man field you need 100 yards because you have 80 yards in play, and then you have those 10 yards, 2 10-yard end zones, so that's 100. With an 11-man field, you need 120. And he said, unless we put the end zones in the middle of 5th and 6th Street, it ain't gonna work. So they can't.
I mean, they're already putting footballs through windows on whatever that street is anyway. So.
Yeah. The highlight of the season, the catch from the moving car, that was pretty good. Yeah.
Who are they gonna play too? Like,
what?
Are they gonna? They're in Taps, right?
They're in Taps. Yeah.
Can you imagine that person, by the way? They're driving around. They're probably a tourist thinking, man, this place isn't as nice as it looks on Fixer Upper. And all of a sudden, a football comes through the window.
Well, so I did have a note about this in a high school notebook a couple weeks ago, right after it happened. It was actually a Baylor student, recent Baylor alum. And they had some Baylor alum friends that had come into town for the Baylor Texas game. I want to say that's right. And they were driving around with the windows down, and they were like looking, and they were like, I wonder if we can catch that ball, because they saw the kicker lining it up, so they were ready. I mean,
they intentionally caught it then, right?
Well, I mean, they were driving that way, but it wasn't like they were completely stunned by the ball coming. So,
see, I envision a new, like, in between TV timeout deal. Somebody drives a golf cart and tries to catch a moving ball in the golf cart.
It's very dude pet perfect stuff. Back to Live Oak. So I just to sort of build off of what DJ said. Yes, they will have to go off site to play their games. I could certainly envision Paul Tyson Field being used in that regard. We've seen Paul Tyson used by Vanguard in the past, but obviously it's an 11-man sized field that's out there and available. I mean, probably for rent. So, but Live Oak has also, been very active in looking around for land and that kind of thing. I mean, they're going to have a baseball field that's sort of a little bit away from their campus. So yeah, they've got people working on that part of it. I'm to Chad's point about what does it take to build a successful 11-man program. I do feel like Live Oak has something that's important, and that is enthusiasm and participation for the sport. Because so I'll again I'll have a note about TAP's realignment in the high school notebook this week. If you look at it, Live Oak's enrollment, well, it's actually going to be a lot more right now than Riker Riker's enrollment has gone down. They're down to like 82 students. Right, Live Oak's about 123 in high school. I want to say Vanguard's about 134, 140 something. Vanguard's going to play 6-man football with more students in their school than Live Oak has. But I mean, Bryce Helton was talking about it to me. He was like, we're trending like next year we'll have like 34 kids on the, high school football program. Like 3 years from now, it would be like 50. I mean, just based on sort of their junior high numbers.
Too many to play 6-man, really.
Right. It is too many to play 6-man. So they're doing the right thing.
Let me make a point about Vanguard playing, because I was talking about the sustainability and the consistency of private schools. Vanguard has been around a long time too. The difference is Vanguard did not play football for decades and decades, and then has launched their 6-man program within the last 10 years.
Yeah. It's been about 12 to 15 maybe.
So Live Oak more like had a football program, from the get-go. So that probably, it's been part of their school since early on. So
yeah. And I will just, to answer that other part of my other question, I feel like China Spring is one of those that I can see being 5A. Maybe not, obviously not this next realignment. I'd have to look at the numbers, but not too far down the road.
That was going to be my answer. I mean, they've got the room to expand. They've got the facilities to expand, I think. You could see them being, kind of Waco's Lake Belton.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, I think every week we say this, we don't talk about, so-and-so enough, this particular team or whatever. So obviously we cover a lot of schools in Central Texas, about 70 that play football. And so we don't always get a chance to cover everyone. You tune in often enough, we'll probably talk about your team. But this is your chance to maybe shout out someone that's flying a little bit under the radar, whether it's a team or a player. DJ, starting with you.
I want to say Groesbeck.
Okay.
Because I feel like we haven't talked about them at all. They're 2-0 in district right now. I think they might be 4-2 overall. But I think it's funny because when I was talking to Coach Bomar, doing our high school previews, he was like, yeah, we're just not going to be that good. We got a lot of young guys. They're 5-1, so they only lost one game. Yeah, but he was just kind of playing it down, and maybe coming into the season it didn't look as clear. But I mean they've got some good players. They've got Chris Cox, who's a pretty good wide receiver, and I think I'm pretty sure they're second place right now in that district. Still got some games to play, but I don't know. I think the goats are looking pretty good right now, and
I took
noticing. Yeah,
I took a look at Groesbeck when I was thinking about this question too, and I think you're right. I think in a little bit they benefit from not playing a real powerful schedule. But you're right. The other thing, DJ, you've been on that Oglesby bandwagon, right? You got some props for being on that Oglesby bandwagon. So
that's more just because I don't know what the other team is doing, and I'm like, okay, Oglesby's been around.
Well, you picked them to beat May though, right? And they beat
she
May.
did. She got
that was a big win.
Oglesby was going to be my answer, so it sounds like Chad's stealing it. But
I'll let you have Oglesby. My actual answer was going to be we still haven't talked about the Chilton Pirates enough.
I agree. It's
number
kind of
4
crazy.
ranked team, and yeah.
I mean, they're
big win last week for them too.
Yeah, big win over Bremond. It came down
to a close game. Yeah,
it came down to the end in a rivalry game. So yeah, Chilton I think has good coaches. I think they have good talent. I think the Pirates can play a while this season. maybe make a run at Jerry World for sure. And Oglesby, to that point, I mean they're second in the state in 1A Division 2.
Yeah.
The smaller of the 6-man classes. I remember talking to Jeb Dixon, former super-centex coach of the year for us. Done a great job there at Oglesby. I remember talking to him before the season and asked him about the ranking, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, but he was like, I really feel like the Mays and all these, he started listing off about 5 or 6 other 6-man powers that they probably should be ranked behind. But man, his team is playing well, and Kyler Fawcett is the guy I'll shout out for Oglesby that's just putting up crazy numbers. Certainly will be in the running for super-centex 6-man coach of the year. So we've talked a lot about Abbott, but I think Oglesby is another one that, and Oglesby's a program that really hasn't had that kind of statewide success. So this is big for that town and the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
And should be fun to see, if they can, make a run in the playoffs. So,
yep.
Yeah. And back to Groesbeck for just a second. We have several coaches in our area who were in their second stint at their respective school. Like,
Robert Little.
Robert Little is one of them. Also, gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. Lonnie Flippin at Walnut Springs. Danny Baker at Coolidge. So a couple 6-man schools there. Baker coached there a long time ago and then came back just like Lonnie Flippin did at Walnut Springs. But Jerry Bomar at Groesbeck won a state championship for the Goats back in the 90s. And so this is a guy that knows how to win. So to DJ's point, I think they're building something good there, and he'll probably hand it off at some point. He can't coach forever, but he's still got some good years in him, I think, Jerry Bomar.
Hey, tell Bruce Bochy that.
And it all comes full circle. Go Astros. I think Chad would say go Rangers, but you will not hear me utter those.
Hey, I'm one of the few people that pull for the Astros and the Rangers, right? Because I grew up an Astros fan. When I was a little kid, my dad took me to Astros games because we'd be in Houston for different reasons.
Yeah.
And so I grew up Jose Cruz and
Kevin
Bass. Kevin Bass and Alan Ashby and Glenn Davis,
Billy
Harry
Hatcher,
Poole,
Mike Scott.
Yep.
Love those.
Not to mention Nolan Ryan, who I was telling Brice earlier. The last time I went to a baseball playoff game, Nolan Ryan was pitching for the Astros. Until last night when I went.
You're dating yourself, which is really all you've been dating in a while, right, Chad? Before we go, Chad will be at La Vega China Spring. That'll be a good one. Be sure to check that one out. DJ will be at University. Who the heck is University playing again?
Elgin.
That's right. The fighting Jason Ortzes. Elgin University. U-Dogs took a loss last week that none of us really saw coming against Pflugerville. But
it was also because it was a Thursday game, and I forgot it was a Thursday game, and so I didn't find out till Friday night. And I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, they lost, but chance for the U-Dogs to bounce back this week against Elgin. And I will be at Midway Copper's Cove. I think Midway has a very good chance to be 3-1 in district play after this week. I've seen Copper's Cove. Midway should beat the Bulldogs.
Honing in on a playoff spot are the Panthers.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see y'all at the games. Thank you.
Sweet.